Hello, I'm Manisila Pamela Ngubane, and this is the Entity Dynamics podcast. Entity Dynamics is a culture development consultancy where we believe that culture creates behavior and behavior creates reality. So, the title of this video is A Culture of Using Our Imagination to Make Sense of Our Reality, the Need to Mythologize. So, mythologizing is a very complex and deep subject, but we're going to just keep it very simple for this video. It's basically making up anthropomorphic stories to explain the reality that we live. So, for example, when there's thunder, it's because they are gods pushing boulders around in the sky or something, or Zeus is throwing his thunderbolt, his lightning bolt. That's why there's lightning. That the Titans and the gods are still fighting in the celestial realms, something like that. Okay. So, using our imagination. So when you use imagination, the whole thing is what if? What if? Okay, so what if the earth is a living being? Okay. And long time ago, she saw that there's all these souls in the cosmos who don't have a home planet, because they've been chucked out, because they're not evolving according to the rules of that planet, so they're not behaving according to the rules of that planet. So they're kind of just wandering about homeless. And then the earth was like, in her compassion, because she's extremely compassionate, she says, you can all come here. Come here. It's okay. I will give you a place to live where you can evolve and develop spiritually the way the Creator desires all of us to do so. So they came, and it was a little bit chaotic. Okay. And in the course of them arriving, she is also maturing. So she bears her children with her consort. And her children are obviously highly evolved beings like she is. And they're like, Mother, what is up with all these creatures here who are so chaotic and disparate in their worldview and in their inclinations? If we go to Venus, we see everyone there is highly spiritual. They're into love in its real form, like compassion, thinking deeply, introspection, very much a soft, beautiful energy. Everything is crystalline and shiny and, pastel rainbow vibes, it's so nice. Then we go to Mars. Okay, they're all very like militaristic and strong and, like a whole planet of Spartans, type of vibe. And then, but also very intellectual. And then we go to Mercury, and they're all scientists, and they're communicating and they're thinking about things, highly intellectual people. And then we go to Pluto, and they're like deep philosophers thinking about the really deep and dark things of life. They're ushering the souls of the dead into the next phase of their existence. They're very introspective, they're very deep, they're very silent, meditative, and then we go to Uranus, and it's all about, also scientific, but much more on like a ethereal level, you know what I'm saying? Etc., etc. Jupiter, they're all very deep thinkers. They're very, very smart. Saturn, they're also like the Plutonians, very deep into the esoteric stuff. Here on Earth, Mother, everyone is just doing their own thing in different ways. There's no set agenda. What's the deal? Why did you let all these creatures, come and live here? What's that about? And she's like, no, my children, don't worry. I have a plan. All these beings, they are here because they haven't been able to evolve quickly enough according to the rules of the planets that they come from. But what I'm thinking to do here is to nurture them so that they can see themselves as individuals with their own individual potential and abilities. And in that way, they will start to self-actualize and become what the Creator desired them to be. It's a bit of a process, but let's be patient with them. It's okay. And her children were like, oh, what a drag to have these very noisy and highly just ADHD vibes type of beings, right? She's like, no, be patient. Look, some of them are evolving. Don't worry. They're like, but can't we speed up the process? I mean, for goodness sake, this is taking too long. And then she was like, okay, we'll set up a setup where we get beings from other planets like Lyra, star system, Orion, highly evolved beings from like the fifth and sixth dimension to come here, incarnate as humans, And we're going to set up a place called Lemuria, right? Where they will teach these beings how to evolve their spiritual consciousness in a very much in line with my compassionate, loving, and patient nature. So they said, okay, cool, mom, whatever. Let's see if it works. So sure, Lemuria was set up, and beings would come and learn, how to connect with the earth, how to see the creator in the earth, and to see themselves as one with the creator by studying nature and by building up their own capacities for compassion and love. And in that way, evolving spiritually and becoming really, solid beings who, are now pleasing the creator because they are in line with what the creator's mission is for her, it's their creation, right? So, okay, sure. But some of the children then start to become more controlling, sort of trying to be more why can't we just make these things just obey us and be like us? Just do what we tell them to do, because then at least they'll be serving a purpose, because we have a serious purpose to serve. And if they're serving us, they'll have a purpose, and we don't have to wait for them to figure things out through this soft, loving approach. So then they set up Atlantis, okay? So initially, obviously, the idea was a high motivated sort of thing of let's help these beings evolve, okay? But now it was very much more in a structured way, right? And then that's where you start seeing things like genetic manufacturing of humans to become Homo sapien and Homo sapien sapiens, away from the Homo erectus, Homo habilis type of very, earthbound, natural type of creature, who were going to evolve into something much more evolved, but not necessarily in the Homo sapien type of stream. But now what they didn't understand is that by doing this physical evolution, which was not in line with spiritual, intellectual, and emotional evolution, they actually created a little bit of a monster. So that's what we have today, if we're mythologizing. Now, in terms of the psychological impact of this type of mythologizing, or psychological analysis of the world we live in, sociological analysis of the world we live in, I think it's an interesting mythologization, because if you look at human beings, this is the way I see it. First of all, we're extremely diverse. And this is why I'm wearing these two different earrings. Okay. We're extremely diverse. We have different worldviews, but we do somehow as humans know that we have the ability to unite around a common cause. And we have the ability to see ourselves in each other to some extent, Obviously, some have more of that ability than others. Some are extremely selfish and self-centered people, ignorant really, and they don't see other humans as like them. But there are other humans who are deeply compassionate. They see each other as fellow humans and they want to help. And they also see the animals that we live with and the planet as being alive and capable of partnership, friendship, and working together for a much more beautiful planet. But the whole point of this that I'm trying to say is that human beings on Earth have shown that when they're treated with compassion and patience, that's when they're able to develop their potential, realize their potential, and then use their potential to become really extraordinarily wonderful creatures and beings. And so, this is what I want people to understand is, and this is the work of entity dynamics, is that we have to develop a culture of being compassionate and patient with each other and with our children, and seeing people for who they are as people, not just as a cog in a machine or someone who needs to produce money and produce this. And, let's be kind. Let's be compassionate, because when we are kind and compassionate, I promise you, it's amazing. And you see it with children. You see it even with animals. You see it with plants, You give them the time, the love, the energy that they require, the nurturing, then you see them blossom, and it's amazing. Being in a classroom as a teacher, for example, when you give the children the compassion and the patience to answer their really pertinent questions that are important to them, you see their faces light up and they love to learn. And that's when education becomes a real tool where people can become the drivers of their own sustainable development. So I hope this makes sense, and thank you for watching. Bye.